All right, recording started. Today is Wednesday, March 7, 2017. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI implementation group. Let's get started. So first thing on the agenda, PRs that need attention. We don't, this is out of date. Are there any PRs that anybody has that they want to talk about? Okay. Any bugs that need attention?
I have one thing I want to talk about real quick.
Yeah, of course.
Can you go to the CSI test repository
Yeah.
and the issues? The one I opened. Go. Yeah. Okay. So this is just a small thing, but I just wanted to gather some feedback and was wondering what you guys thought about it. Basically, in CSI test right now, it looks like it's one big package with what looks like to me some E2E tests and unit tests all together. And I guess my issue with this is for the unit tests, for example, such as like a create volume unit test that's just supposed to test whether it returns invalid argument when there's no volume ID, for example. Right, this should be a unit test, and I think it should have like a mocked out backend. So we should have the ability to mock out the backend before calling that test framework. And the problem with not mocking out the backend is if that test actually fails, right, and the provider doesn't actually return invalid argument and kind of goes through the whole process, we could have side effects of the volume actually being created from this unit test of checking for invalid arguments. Whereas for some of the end-to-end tests, we actually want these side effects to occur so that we can test whether they're working correctly. And another issue was that I noticed that some of those end-to-end tests were actually duplicated inside the different suites. So we had controller publish volume had an end-to-end test called should return appropriate values. And this was basically a test that went through the entire workflow of creating, publishing, and then unpublishing and deleting. And this test was duplicated exactly inside controller unpublish. So it looks like people have already been confused about where to put these types of tests. So the proposal is just to split it up into a kind of a unit testing framework and then a end-to-end testing framework. We're not going to be prescriptive about how to call these, but the fact that they're split means that you could potentially call the unit test framework with a mocked out backend so that you don't have these unwanted side effects. And having an end-to-end test framework split out would mean that we're no longer going to have these duplicated end-to-end tests in these in the different kind of unit test sections, I guess. Does anyone have any thoughts about this or questions?
No, I think this is a great idea. I think the little bit that I've looked at this CSI test directory confuses me a lot. So anything we can do to clean this up, I would be on board for. I don't know if too many people on the call have actually played around with CSI tests. Sergey, I think you have. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense. Well, after David provided a clarification, because I wasn't sure whether he was basically he wanted to preserve the mini-mock driver we use for a unit test and kind of dump the mock driver we got from Andrew for end-to-end test, but it seems that we can keep both. So for the unit test, we will use just what Luis developed.
Okay.
Yeah, it might make sense to me.
Cool. And in terms of directory structure, do you want to just have a high-level E2E tester, CSI sanity, or leave CSI sanity as the end-to-end tester and have like a unit test directory and a mock directory, or?
I haven't thought too much about that yet, but I think it makes sense for both to be called CSI Sanity in
I
some
see.
way, like CSI Sanity Unit, CSI Sanity E2E.
Got it.
But yeah, I haven't thought about it much more than that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good to me. Are you going to drive this?
I can. Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
And Sergey, would you be interested in helping?
Well, yes, a little bit because I'm working now on the self driver, like
Ah, okay.
converting it to 0 to 0. So as soon as I'm done, I can help if David needs any help.
Okay.
Sure.
Anybody
And
else interested in helping David out with this?
it looks like Sergey's also been already writing E2A tests, and he also generated that entire list of good unit tests. So as soon as we get it split up, which try to do as soon as possible, Sergey, we can start adding those tests in the appropriate places.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Wasn't Aaron Boyd working on some of this stuff already?
Not
I don't want to
on,
your
not on the Kubernetes, sorry, not on the CSI side of things, I don't think, that I'm aware of.
I thought her and the EMC guy were not black.
Oh,
They had an ET test framework they were working to set up, and
I don't know what happened about that. You're right. I remember there was some conversation about that, about certification and that kind of thing, and then it kind of just dropped off the radar. I haven't heard anything since.
let me send her an email, and I'll
Okay.
see you guys and see if
Okay.
anything came of it, where it stands, and maybe there's already some work there, or else maybe she wants to step in and help on this.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think last I heard from our side, we have the CSI Sanity thing that we wanted to move into CSI proper. And based on what David mentioned just now, we want to break CSI Sanity, clean it up a little bit by breaking up end-to-end and unit tests, which makes sense to me. But it sounds like eventually we should move CSI Sanity into the CSI repository itself. One thing we want to be careful about is throwing around the word certification because that freaks people out. So CSI Sanity is a good starting point, and certification is something we can consider before 1.0. The CSI Sanity Suite will probably be one aspect of certification, but there could potentially be other things in that process. So if we keep this focused on just sanity or smoke tests, that's a good place to start. But yeah, that sounds good, Brad. Let's loop in Erin and see what her thoughts are.
Maybe I mean maybe there is kind of a miscommunication. I was under impression that the work was done by Aaron was mostly on the Kubernetes E2E side. Here, end-to-end is completely Kubernetes CO independent, so we don't need a Kubernetes to run our end-to-end tests.
The stuff that her and Clint were working on were like certification tests.
Okay.
So it wasn't just the Kubernetes side, but she was doing EDE tests in Kubernetes as well. But so it was a little bit of both.
Cool. So it sounds like action items, or Brad's going to follow up there with Erin, and then in the meantime, David's going to continue to go ahead and clean up CSI Sanity Test Suite, break up end-to-end and unit tests, and then once that's done, everyone is going to be able to help add new end-to-end tests there and unit tests. All right, cool. Thanks, David. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to that? All right, cool. Vlad, was there something you wanted to discuss? I think around the device plugin stuff.
Yeah, because you had asked me to look into it, and I've been looking into it since yesterday, I think. And so I think there's quite bit of a gap as far as the interface, the surface area of the interfaces between what we have in CSI and what the device plugin is offering. I mean, the most I see that we can get out of this is the kubelet being aware of where the driver plugins Unix domain path is located. I don't see anything else that we can get out of this, because I think the operations and basically what the device plugin is targeting is kind of different than what we're offering with the drivers. Unless we consider a driver a plugin, then we would have to kind of wholesale adopt the device plugin API. Having said that, there's some stuff we can leverage. Mainly, if we were willing to kind of make the driver plugin look like a device, maybe we can kind of go down that path and advertise a driver as a device, I guess. Or the other thing I was thinking of, should we consider a volume, or before a volume becomes a volume, the act of having a device getting attached as a volume, should that be considered an actual device and advertise and start the flow at that point? So these are the big question marks that I was looking into, and kind of I wanted to discuss. And then the other thing I noticed in the API for the device manager plugin is the fact that they have objects called mounts, and it looks like they're also doing some mounting operation.
Oh, I think you might have looked at the device plugin API. So there's two different things, right? There's the device plugin API, and then there is the device plugin registration API. So the device plugin API, I absolutely agree. I looked at that a while ago, and I was trying to figure out what the overlaps would be between volumes and device plugin API. And what I realized was they're tackling a different use case, and we're going to leave the volume interfaces completely independent of those for now. We have completely different requirements. The thing that I was most interested in was the device plugin registration scheme. And so my understanding is what was being proposed there was some sort of handshake, some way to discover new Unix domain socket endpoints for either CSI drivers or device plugins or CNI or whatever, and then some sort of handshake between kubelet and the socket, and then being able to hand that socket off to the required component that can be used to talk to it. It sounds like you might have looked at the former rather than the latter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you come across a design proposal for what you just described,
yeah,
that way, because the only thing I came up with is the device plugin. But the device plugin itself kind of gave me pause, because I see that they're advertising mounts, which is outside outside the scope of the volume API. I don't know how you feel about that, and I don't know how far that is, but
yeah, I agree. That is like completely outside of our scope. We're not interested in the device plugin API at all, and that was my bad. I probably should have linked you to the right place.
All right.
I'll pass the link to you offline or paste it in here after the meeting, and then we can follow up there.
I'll take a look at that too. All right.
Cool. Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
All right. Any other updates? Okay. Excuse me. I think all the moving from 0.1 to 0.2 is done. We're going to follow up with that offline. The next big thing is all about end-to-end tests and making sure the drivers have been updated and documentation exists. I don't think we have enough volunteers to make good progress on this. So if you're sitting on the sidelines and are interested in participating, please reach out to Sergey or to David and ask where you can help. Because we need to get an end-to-end test suite. We need to update the existing drivers, and we need to make sure everything is working end-to-end and the tests are running within Kubernetes and CI/CD. And then finally, documentation also needs help. I think I'm going to focus on the documentation side. So wherever you can help, please raise your hand and ask. That's kind of it. We have a couple of weeks left until the release, so we need to get the remainder of these things done before then. All right. Anything else anybody wants to talk about?
Yeah, there was a PR from one of the Slack members. He was playing with the Hostpass plugin, and yesterday we were working together to make it working, and so it was successful. And based on that experience, the guy put together a documentation PR, basically describing the whole process. So that could be used as a basically kind of a starting point.
That would be awesome. And that's in the documentation repo?
Yep.
Cool.
So I tested the latest code with, I think that has Sergey's changes and with the Hostpass, and that works for me as well. So I started to look at the NFS. So in the README, actually, it uses the the CLI from Go CSI. I think some of those needs to update because that's still going to the old code team repo, so you should go to the new one. So I just started going through those commands.
Okay. Awesome. That's super helpful. All right, cool. And then I think, Sergey, you're looking at Ceph already?
Yep. Yeah, refactoring it.
Cool. And then David's working on the GCPD. And then I guess when Elise gets back, you'll look at Portworx. Okay, cool.
So who's the one who originally wrote the NFS plugin? Is he not on this call?
I think it was Chakri.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and I believe he's been on vacation.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if there's someone I can ask if I run into some issues with that.
The CSI NFS, or are you talking about the Cube NFS driver?
The CSI NFS.
Go.
Trying to update that one with the 0.2. I think Sergey actually has already made a lot of changes, so I can start the driver. So, but I just started trying those with the CLI first. The one in Go CSI.
Makes sense.
And see if there's any changes needed.
Brad, do you have anybody on your side, maybe Wamin or someone who can help with some of these drivers?
Yeah, so let me be upfront here. I'm a little confused because I thought we had a cut date for 110, but it seems like you guys are, right in the midst of work here. Where's this scheduled for? Is this 111 work?
No. So we had the code freeze for the core Kubernetes.
Right.
That was about a week or so ago. The idea there is that anything that needs to go into the core of Kubernetes should be, the code should be completed for that, and that is the case. But we have lots of components that are external to the core of Kubernetes that need to be updated. Those include the CSI drivers themselves and the external components like the the external provisioner, the external attacher, the driver registrar. So for the most part, the sidecar containers have all been updated thanks to a lot of work by Sergey and others. What remains to be updated at this point are the drivers themselves. They are not 0.2 compliant yet in all cases. So it looks like Sergey's been working on Ceph. He worked on Hostpath with some other folks. Sheng is looking at CSI, NFS. David's doing GCEPD. So all these existing drivers that we have kind of need somebody to go in and update them. It's not absolutely critical that all of them be updated because we could mark them, we could just delete them because they're samples and examples, but it would be nice to have them updated and working through 0.2.
What's on our feature list for 110? I mean, so we list CSI as alpha, right? The CSI supports alpha. Do we list any particular volume plugins that we're shipping with 110?
We're not going to ship any plugins, but if you go to the Kubernetes CSI documentation page, we have a list of drivers there, and we just need to make sure that those drivers have been updated to be compatible with 110.
Okay, my point is, like, sure, we're not subject to the cutoff date, but the cutoff date's good because it forces people to work on tests and documentation. And if we're still developing the drivers, we can't do that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And ideally, we shouldn't have to. I think we're getting into this, like, maintaining these drivers ourselves, which is what we kind of wanted to get away from.
Yep.
But we're in this state where the project is early enough, we kind of have to do that until others are going to step up and take ownership of this stuff. And then we can get to a point where we can make the changes on our side, and then, whoever else can follow after our release to update the drivers. But for now, since this is, we want folks to try it out, we want folks to test it, and we need to make sure that the examples that we're giving them are up to date. So
okay.
Now I consider this kind of like documentation level.
I have resources, and they're ready to jump in on this, but I have held off, thinking that you were closing stuff up for 110.
Yep.
I would like to see what the, where the finish line is for this. So we can prioritize stuff, and I can help them prioritize what they should be working on to get this stuff done for 110. Cool. And then we can work at the ad hoc stuff afterwards, right? Because they want to get involved in this stuff too. They're ready to jump on the drivers. Awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. And in terms of finish line, like our real finish line is when 1.10 cuts, and we want to make sure that end to end we have all our use cases working well. So
do we need the end-to-end test framework for that? I mean, is that?
Yep. And so there are already end-to-end tests in Kubernetes. They were failing. Sergey was looking into getting them fixed. And part of that is going to be the work that David is doing, which is like cleaning up the CSI sanity tests and then having them run through Kubernetes on some of the drivers. Basically, we just need to add a crap ton more tests.
I'm not sure the CSI sanity is related to the Kubernetes end-to-end.
Okay.
End-to-end test.
Right,
Unless I'm missing something.
They're different. So the test we run in the Kubernetes E2E, it's very basic test, but it goes through the dynamic provisioning of the volume. So it runs exactly the same test as run by other in-tree plugins.
Got it. Okay. So basically we have different layers of testing. We have testing for the external components themselves, the external drivers, which I believe the CSI test suites can be used for, at least on the external drivers. And then we need to have end-to-end tests on the Kubernetes side, which I believe already exist against a mock driver, right, Sergey?
No, actually, we're using Hostpath driver there.
Okay.
But we should add mock as well as some of the other drivers if people want to add them.
So we need a knock list for 110, right? And that should be the stuff that we're focusing on to close out 110.
Yeah. Let me come up with that list, and I'll add it to this doc. So if you could pull resources, I can give you the list of things that we need in the priority.
Okay, I definitely will. If we have that list, I'll definitely do it.
Okay, cool. I will follow up with that offline then. All right, thank you. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about? All right, cool. We'll reconvene on Friday then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.